I am your host, the Public Relations Officer for the Barbados Union of Teachers, Julian Pierre. Now, we would have had a meeting with the Ministry of Education, Technical and Vocational Training today, Friday, 12th of March, 2021. And here to report to our members is our President, Brother Pedro Shepherd. Good afternoon, President.
Good afternoon, PRO. Good afternoon, members. Good afternoon, listening public.
Okay, so we'd have received a letter from the Ministry of Education at the beginning of the week, and it would have regarded proposals for the start of term 3. One of the main things sent in the letter from the Acting Chief Education Officer, Joy Adamson, would have been the proposed new date for the Barbados Secondary Schools entrance examination. And it says, and I quote, "Class 4 teachers have expressed a desire to return to face-to-face instruction to better prepare students for the BSSEE. Also, it says Class 4 to return to the classroom for the duration of term 3. Now, the Barbados Union of Teachers would have met with its members yesterday, Thursday, and they were asking for an update, obviously following today's meeting, as we compare contents of the letter to what was actually said to the members. So you can give us some input regarding the developments coming out of the meeting with the members yesterday.
Well, yesterday evening we met with our membership. Quite a significant number of members were in the Zoom meeting, and we had a number of contributions from members. Of particular mention, it would be the persons in special needs. And sometime during this discussion, I want us to zero in on special needs. But the meeting was really called out of a response we had to supply to the Ministry of Education by yesterday evening to ahead of a meeting scheduled for 10 o'clock this morning. That meeting was held at 12 o'clock today. It lasted for just over 2.5 hours, and out of that meeting I am not sure if I can say that we have information to share, because we were asked to offer recommendations. So dates for common entrance, etc., and so on might not necessarily be confirmed dates. But what I want to share with the members would be the response out of our meeting, the response that we sent to the Ministry of Education. And I would elaborate on some of those points. Now, again, let me say that the union has some challenges with correspondence from the ministry. Let me at the outset state that the correspondence we received Monday came Monday night at 2 minutes to 9. And we were expected to meet members and to respond by yesterday. Now, that time frame really had the union scrambling, but nevertheless, we thank the members for making the effort to attend. Out of that meeting, we prepared some information sent to the ministry, and I'm going to give you an idea as to what we sent, because what we sent to the ministry should have reflected what teachers said at the meeting, and I'm sure that if there's anything that we missed, this opportunity here now would allow you that space to further ask questions or seek clarification. We noted that in the opening paragraph of the correspondence from the ministry, it indicated that the Chief Medical Officer stressed that students should return to face-to-face instruction as soon as possible. Now, that particular statement really caught us. We felt that that statement was indeed an ambitious one, especially in the environment where we have community spread, where we have clusters, and a lot of these clusters now are within families. We have a number of hotspots in Barbados. And to make the statement, which we assume was based on the science, that students should return face-to-face as soon as possible, caused tremendous concern for us. We also felt that this, coupled with the fact that the demographic to which the ministry was referring is the least affected by the coronavirus. This group is often asymptomatic and more often vectors of this disease, but appears less vulnerable to the effects of the disease. So whilst we were thinking that the students are not that susceptible to the virus, they are indeed, because recent reports from the Ministry of Health suggested that there were at one point 108 minors in isolation in Barbados. So that is a matter of concern for us, to have students returning to school minus a vaccination, coming from homes where family members would have had corona, coming from villages and communities where there was community spread.
Okay. In relation to the return to school, you also mentioned that of the special schools. Now, with meeting members yesterday evening, many of them expressed concern relating to space in the classroom, relating to the different natures of the students and their disabilities, where some, for example, you need to touch them when they run away to try to get them back, in terms of some of them not being able to hear and doing sign language and all of these other things. I am sure that some of the members would have expressed, as special school teachers, their concern for the return to school as well.
Yes, I think these special needs teachers at our meeting yesterday were the most vocal, and we did inform the ministry that the membership, and particularly those in the special needs, were very unanimous in their position on the return of students to the special needs schools or special units at this time. There was absolutely no support for the return of those students. Teachers indicated that online instruction was not the best form of delivery for this category of student. They were clear that any return to face-to-face for these students would be premature in a COVID-19 environment. We must remember, as the teachers pointed out, that these students are the more vulnerable ones. These are the ones with the weaker immune systems. These are the ones with medical issues, and the ones who are more difficult to supervise. And some may even require physical contact at times, critical times, and may have to be restrained. So there has to be that physical contact with special needs students, and so the teachers in the special units are totally against any return to school within this current corona period. A number of them highlighted the overcrowding at schools, the poor conditions of bathrooms at the special units, and when we sat and we listened to the plight of the special units, we wondered really and truly if the ministry, if the government of Barbados is really serious about our special needs students and obviously our special needs teachers.
Okay, in addition to the class 4s and the special needs schools reopening, some teachers would have suggested that we act on their behalf in the meeting earlier today, asking about putting up barriers for teachers, tables, etc., as a protective measure for them, especially for the suggestion of a return to school in term 3. What was the ministry's take on it?
That was raised at the ministry this morning as well, but the ministry we are of the view, our teachers are of the view, that protective screens should be erected and made available at least at the teacher's desk for when students are coming to the teacher for that one-on-one contact, etc. We notice that is the standard now in places of business in Barbados, and schools being a similar sort of a place of business as well. We thought that teachers should have those protective barriers. Of course, we know that teachers cannot teach from behind a screen unless it is online teaching, and teachers would have to move through the classroom from time to time. But at least while the teacher is doing that, the teacher is aware of who he's going to, who she's going to, and the contact that is to be made. If the teacher is at the desk, there are times when children approach the desk without your knowledge. And we know that particularly in the younger students, those students come with minor colds and so on, and they touch teachers. So the protective screen, we believe, should be a priority for teachers, so that at least at some point during the course of the day you can resort to a safe place where you can feel not as exposed and not at risk, so to speak. But the ministry is of the view that it is going to be a bit costly to do it for maybe 4,000 teachers across the system, and not only the cost, but I guess the timing to get them erected in time for what they would want to be the reopening of schools may be a challenge for the ministry.
Okay, one of the concerns from teachers, especially returning to the face-to-face environment, will have been that of how children traverse to and from school using public transportation, walking in their groups, out of a concern of the still community spread on the island. What was the feedback from teachers? Because the letter says that the teachers are ready, but it did not make mention addressing such concerns.
Right. The issue of transportation was raised in the meeting this morning with the ministry as well. The minister did point out that they are looking at increasing the number of buses to be made available to schools, to see how best they can get the children transported across the country. But it is a challenge that presents a serious risk, and teachers are not comfortable with having students traversing the entire country and then coming into the schools, unless, of course, those modes of transportation can guarantee that there is that high level of sanitizing and so on. But of course, as students then move from bus terminal to bus terminal or from bus stop to terminal, there's always the opportunity for them to come in contact with other persons on the streets, come into contact with railings, come in contact with so many other things, that I think the issue of being able to move students will be a serious concern whenever we are looking at the return of students to schools.
Based on the return to school last term, that being the first term, you know that we would have instituted some protocols into the schools as advised by the ministry, guided by the science. Generally from the membership, what was their feedback on how the face-to-face term went?
I think generally the teachers felt that the face-to-face provided them with the opportunity they wanted to interact with the students, but the risk involved and the challenges having to be speaking to students constantly about social distancing, having to speak to them about wearing the mask properly, having to speak to them about gathering with their friends and so on, took away from the actual teaching time. Yes, there were monitors placed in the schools and the monitors assisted, but I think education is critical in this, and the parents too would have a lot to play in educating their children as to what safety precautions and so on should be taken. And having gone through that, I don't think that teachers at this stage would want to be bogged down with having that sort of responsibility. but haven't lost so much teaching time, face-to-face teaching time. I think that should be the responsibility really of the Ministry of Education to provide the manpower to be able to sanitize as adequately, as often, to assist children with the correct wearing of masks and those things. Those are things that teachers really cannot afford to spend so much time with, because we already have the issues of discipline and so on that takes away from our teaching time.
Okay, as we change over to secondary school with that of CXC, we would have discussed it in our last show, but for our reviewers who may have missed the last show, just to give a bit of an update, we know that in the region, they had made a decision to move on with CXC. They will set the dates, etc. However, in Barbados, we would have had some issues regarding that of SBAs and students doing SBAs from home using the technology. So just to give the viewers an idea of what we would have discussed with members and their concerns.
Yes, in relation to the Caribbean Examination Council and the exams, the union understands and notes that the dates for CXC have already been agreed on by the local and regional authorities. There's nothing that we can do in terms of the dates. Our challenge, though, in the secondary schools would be to ensure that the required assistance and guidance for students doing the SBAs and the practicals be given, and that the conditions are conducive for the safe return and provisions are made as well for the health and safety of all those individuals. The view is, though, that various secondary schools can arrange the necessary scheduling for students to complete their assignments. Once the protocols are in place, we believe that with scheduling, they might be able to assist students in completing the SBAs and the practicals. I know the technical people, the music teachers and so on are having challenges because they have to do some one-on-one. In terms of music, for example, I heard teachers say they have to do one-on-one. I believe in home economics, they may also be need to do one-on-one. So the challenge is that these students look very well coming, as I said, from homes where there was the coronavirus, where people were in isolation or still in isolation. Some of these students were also in isolation or probably were in isolation. So teachers are really challenged in this period to effectively do what they want to do, and that is to teach. How we are going to get over the challenge, how we're going to get over the fears, I am not sure. We would have discussed vaccines, and that will probably come later as well. But of course, we know that that is not going to make you immune, let me put it that way, to the virus. So the efficacy and all that is still being addressed. But teachers want to get back into the classroom, they want to teach, but the risk outweighs anything else. The health of the teacher must very much be considered, and I think that has to be priority. So I don't think that it is easy, but we will see how best we can assist students for the Barbados Secondary School's entrance exam. We see how best we can assist students for the Caribbean Examination Council examinations. And we want to, from the union's perspective, we want to wish our teachers well, and we ask them to continue to play it safe. We know you love your students, but you have to take your health into consideration and that of your family as well. Because when you leave school, you have to go home to your families.
Right. And as you mentioned, the topic of vaccines, one of the concerns of members on seeing the trend around the world and wondering if it is something that's going to happen in Barbados. Watching the news, we would have seen some persons even complain about it. This term, no jab, no job. And teachers too were fairly vocal in the meeting yesterday evening, asking, is this a case that the Ministry of Education will go down this route for teachers will they be forced to take the vaccine in order to return to school or to have a job, to keep their job?
If I can report what the minister said in relation to vaccine, the minister said that the vaccine is not mandatory at this point. And when she said at this point, it suggests to me that it may very well become mandatory at some point. Now, the Barbados Union of Teachers, we welcome the suggestion by the Ministry of Education that teachers will be given priority in the next rollout of the vaccine for those who wish to take the vaccine. And we want to state that it is an individual decision. If you want to take it, you should be given priority. If you don't want to take it, then you just simply don't take it. However, we have suggested to the ministry that for this rollout, if teachers are to be treated as priority, and if teachers are to be treated as essential, and if teachers are to be treated as important, that provision should be made though for teachers to present themselves at specific locations. So we're asking that maybe some schools can be used, maybe tents set up in some areas, maybe the ministry can look to see where the teachers, the demographics and where the teachers come from, etc., and try to capture them. But we do not think that teachers ought to be placed in long lines waiting for vaccines. If it is so important for us to have vaccines so that we can reach a level of herd immunity, and that is another issue that we need to address, then teachers must be treated a certain way. So we expect that in the next rollout, which the minister says should be in a few weeks, those teachers who are interested would be able to get their vaccines, and that again would be the first dose. The second dose then would come maybe around the end of June, July, and it's after the second dose that you are given some immunity to the coronavirus. And all of that assisted us in making the determination that teachers cannot safely return to schools before September. If we return before September, it's because we simply want to get the class 4s prepared for the exam, which we are hoping would be deferred by at least a week from the date which is set 22nd or so of June. We're looking at probably the 6th of July for the common entrance, but again, that is a recommendation that was sent to the ministry. They have to make the final determination on that. And for the CXCs, we know the exam dates have been set. I think it is July, August, June, July. So again, teachers would go in and be able to assist. And we're risking our lives, let me put it this way, to go in and assist the nation's children, because we would not have had the second vaccine by then. Some teachers might have it, because a few of them would have gone in the first rollout and braved the long lines and so on. But the majority of teachers would have to wait for at least July to have the second dose and to be in a safe position, so to speak, to be able to fully go back to school. So we're looking at proposing a September restart for full face-to-face. And that is contingent, I must say, that is contingent of what develops in this country. Because if we go into a third wave, then September 2 would be obviously not appropriate or suitable to return.
Okay, Mr. President, we want to thank you for briefing the members at this time. Remember, this was an update following the members' meeting on Thursday, March the 11th, 2021, and a meeting with the Ministry of Education, Technical and Vocational Training today, Friday, March the 12th, 2021. Once again, I am your host, Public Relations Officer of the Barbados Union of Teachers, Julian Pierre, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.